Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Mr. Joynt Live. Tonight we are broadcasting not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook. It'll be Mr. Joynt's debut Facebook appearance. He's not on any social media, so this was kind of our way to get him, on social media without him having to have a Facebook page or anything, a Twitter account or Instagram or anything like that. His excuse is because he doesn't have any friends. So he'll be here in a minute. He's doing yoga right now. He's finishing up, getting some nice stretches in before the show. We will be here every Friday night live at 8 p.m. And if you're not a member of YouTube or whatever, you don't go on it, we don't care if you subscribe or not. But if you are on Facebook, make sure you reach out, share this channel so it reaches more of his alumni. If you don't know who Mr. Joynt is, or maybe you never had him for class, he is a U.S. history teacher for high schools, and he taught at a private school for a very long time, and then now he is in the public school system. But we're here every Friday night, 8 p.m. on YouTube and now on Facebook. I am out of Facebook prison. I was in Facebook jail for a little while, but they've released me. I made a bad Hillary Clinton joke, and I guess the fact checkers didn't like it. We do take donations for the show. So if you can use Cash App, that's the only thing we really have right now to use, because obviously this show isn't very big. And as Mr. Joynt says, he doesn't have any friends, so it probably won't be very popular. So if you could donate to the show, we use Cash App. There's a promo code. It's in the description on the bottom of the channel. And then when you send the money, make sure you send it to the $RJoynt. And then for your donation, we have Mr. Joynt Live t-shirts coming out. They'll be available starting next week. Make sure you get a t-shirt. You'll get it for free, but just, try to donate a little bit more than $5 or $10. The shirts were a little expensive. Plus shipping nowadays is very expensive. So anything, don't be cheap. But you get a free t-shirt when you donate. And we are now taking guests for Mr. Joynt Live. So if you'd like to be a guest and talk to Mr. Joynt Live, we will be inviting guests. So the way you do that is you can contact me through Facebook Messenger, okay, or you can email me to robbiejoynt@hotmail. Okay, that's my secondary email account, so it's not going to clog up my main email account. So and then I'm probably sure I'll get some crazy internet people emailing me all sorts of stuff. So, but if you want to be a guest on Mr. Joynt Live, say hi, whatever. Talk about conspiracies, talk about old times. It'd be a great time to reconnect with Mr. Joynt. I know some of you all miss him. You've reached out to me and said, I appreciate the comments. Hey, it's great to see him again and all that. So we appreciate the support for the show. And there was one other thing I wanted to talk about real quick before he joins us. And I'm drawing a blank. So if I remember it, I'll bring it up later. But here's Mr. Joynt. He's giving me the thumbs up. He's ready. So let me grab him. There he is.
All right. Good evening. And
Good evening. Sorry, I forgot. I'm drawing a blank. There was something else. Well, the live chats are open. There it is. Okay. So if you guys want to chat to him too, the live chats are open. 200. And please keep it rated PG. All right.
And that's to me. He's saying that to me.
Yeah.
But happy Constitution Day.
Yes, that's right. Constitution Day. This isn't the day the Constitution was written, though.
No.
This is the day it was signed in. This is years later, right? When it 1781 or something?
1787.
Okay, wow. All right. So
today, 234 years ago today, right around this time, they all came together in candlelight, and they had enough of the representatives to have a quorum. And then a couple of more guys came in, and they had enough to have a ratification vote to send it to the states. And that triggered, of course, the, who was it? Alexander Hamilton, I'm drawing a blank too, James Madison and others to go ahead and push for it in the newspapers and the media at the time. And man, I can't believe I don't remember that, but I don't.
We're getting old, man.
Yeah, I know. Constitution Day and Palm Beach County Schools through the Florida Department of Education required that all social studies teachers teach a unit today. And we did. And I taught on the document that preceded the Constitution, even though it was all of them were psychology classes, because that's what I have. I taught a unit on the Northwest Ordinance, and the Northwest Ordinance is what set up, really, 2 months later, the Constitution to be ratified. And also, a lot of people don't know this about I think I taught it back in the day, Land Ordinance of 1785, Northwest Ordinance 1787. And it set up the creation of the Bill of Rights. I want to say presidential papers, but that's not what that was called. And somebody probably out there knows it, and they're going to shame me. But I was going to text it real quick here. Documents, or document used to push the Constitution. But while I'm doing that, the Northwest Ordinance, Abraham Lincoln was asked in the late 1850s, what's the most important document in American history? And he did not say the Declaration of Independence or the Mayflower Compact that 3 of Robbie's ancestors signed. And Hasten Cassim, who might be looking tonight, he's a WA alumni, and we are all related through Stephen Hopkins, or the Hess family, and we're all that are graduates of WA. We were all related through Stephen Hopkins and William Brewster.
Now, is that Hess Gas?
No, no relation. That's a German company. But then Mr. Smith, Coach Smith.
That would be
nice. No, Coach Smith. No. We're related to him through William Brewster. So, but anyway, Lincoln did not say it was the Mayflower Compact or the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. He said it was the Northwest Ordinance. The Northwest Ordinance said, in its comment about schools, and I just want, because this is what I did today, in its comment about schools, the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 said, in one of its comments was, one of its ordinances, religion and morality being necessary for good government and the happiness of mankind, that's an adjective clause, schools and the means of education shall be encouraged. So that adjective clause was modifying schools and the means of education, which would be teachers, teacher qualifications, curriculum, anything else you want to use to teach, lesson plans, whatever. So what the Northwest Ordinance founding fathers, who some of them were the same people that wrote the Constitution 234 years ago today and showed up to sign it, what they're saying is that schools should be teaching religion, morality, and knowledge. And I leave it with you to decide. And I asked my students today at Boca Raton High School, what do you think we're doing? Some of them thought we're doing pretty good. We have a lot of religious groups on campus. We're allowed to have those during the day. Everybody, I mean, Muslims, Jews, Christians. And I even told a girl who's big into yoga, I said, you could pull out your yoga mat because we now have under Governor Ron DeSantis and the state legislature, which was a bipartisan resolution, half of the Democrats in the Florida legislature voted for this too, which is a moment of silence every morning in the Florida public schools. And I told them, I said, if you want to from now on, it doesn't say what the moment of silence has to be. But if you want to, I told this one girl, if you want to pull out your yoga mat and do a yoga position and meditate for 50 minutes, 60 minutes, have at it. She actually had a yoga mat. She didn't do it. But anyway, because yoga is, of course, Eastern religion as well. People don't realize that, but it is, and that's fine. And all it says in the Northwest Ordinance is religion. All it says in the First Amendment, ratified in 1791 under the Constitution, is religion. It doesn't say what kind. So, whatever. I know there's arguments out there that they meant Christian religion. I say, prove it. Show me the documentation that says, I think our country just wanted everybody to be happy. Thomas Jefferson said it in the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness and the freedom. And that's the kind of way I left it with my public school kids, the freedom to pursue religion or the freedom to not pursue it. And I didn't mean to jump in, but Constitution Day, 234 years ago, probably right about now, Eastern Standard Time, it was around 8:30 that they all gathered in Philadelphia in what is now called, I think it's Constitution Hall, where they, not only the Declaration of Independence, but the Constitution. If you ever have a chance to go to Philly, Liberty Bell's right next door, a must-see experience for all you history individuals. So with that, happy Constitution Day. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, and then when the Constitution kind of works hand in hand with morality. Like in order to
Sure.
uphold the Constitution, you got to be a pretty decent human being.
Yep.
And as the more liberal and left we get, it's like you kind of take that all away. Everything goes,
Yeah.
religion and being decent and not a hypocrite. All this stuff
Mm.
we see nowadays. I mean, the people who are in charge need to be decent people. They
Yes.
need to have integrity and morals and stick up for what's right. That's the only way the Constitution works. Um,
Mm.
as far as I care. But my opinion really isn't worth a whole lot.
I
So
was going to say to see if you could see if anybody texted what was the main document that was backing the Constitution. If anybody sent that in, that would be worth a T-shirt right there. I'd pay
yeah,
for that. I'm texting right now. I'm cheating, seeing if Google will tell me. I can't believe that. Okay, document backing the
you
Constitution.
need to get some Prevagen or something.
Yeah, I need to do
Start
something.
taking
Sorry. Yeah, there's
Prevagen
a
and
lot of stuff. Oh man. The Bill of Rights. Okay, there's a really okay. Okay,
wasn't
here.
it the compact, the Philadelphia?
Well, you had a number of things. You had Mayflower Compact. You had
Not
the
the May, but it was the
Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, John Hooker, um, and then you had what else? Yeah, you had some other. Um, you had two things: the Connecticut Compromise, and then you had man, it's been too long.
you're
Till we
failing
talked
your
to-
own test.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's the English Bill of Rights. I'm looking at it now. I'm cheating. Um, but it was a
That's what your
document.
students do
It
now.
was a series of called Publius that James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, who were really on the opposite sides of a lot of things, but they came together and they went ahead. Okay, Articles of Confederation. That's not it. Someone's going to know this out there, and I'm glad. Um, okay, ratifying history. Let me press this. See if I can find. Jeez. Okay, I'm sorry. People are probably turning off right now. Yeah, September
Yeah,
17th, 1787. And then it went out to the U.S. preamble. There it is. I had a kid know the preamble by heart. And what's really interesting is he's only been in this country 2 years from Venezuela, but he knew the preamble by heart and recited it as a senior in high school in my class. And he knew it. And he said he couldn't wait to get to America. Israel Rodriguez, what a boy. What an inspiration. I'll tell you, you got people like that coming in. I know there's problems with, mass migration and everything, but you got some gems coming in there. I'm telling you, it was awesome. And I'm looking at
well, it's
trying
funny you
to,
brought that up because
yeah,
I don't know if you've watched the news the past couple days. Did you see that stuff with the Del Rio underneath the bridge? Does
yeah, the
that
bridge,
remind
yeah,
you
the
of the
bridge, yeah, tons
Cuban?
of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, I've seen a lot of those are shirts. I've seen a lot of
yeah,
you know, people saying that, well, how'd they get from Haiti to Texas and all this
yeah.
time?
They
You know,
found a way.
well, obviously somebody's transporting. And if you look at this
Mhm.
photo, I just put it up. That dude has a cell phone. And I've seen
Yeah,
so many pictures with they
yeah,
have cell phones, all of
yeah,
them, these brand new cell
yeah,
phones. Where are they charging it?
yeah. Well,
They're
uh,
under a bridge. I mean, do they
well,
have
some of these
did they
guys are
did they
electricians.
rig up?
I'm telling you, downtown Miami, where the homeless people hang out under bridges, they have ways. Some of these guys are, they had experience as electrical workers and whatever, and they hook into the light fixtures. I've seen it. They've hooked into the light fixtures, and they can hook up plugs. They can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get stuff, and that's how they do it. If to answer your
Yeah,
question, and
I don't know. I
federal and
think it's
state
I
for
think I think it's kind of like, I mean, this is a conspiracy show, right? So
yes, it
here's
is.
an interesting conspiracy theory. So do you think that they're using immigration, the southern border, as Trojan horses? And what I mean by that is, if you look at underneath that bridge, they're all packed together. They're
Yeah,
using porta potties. They're all drinking out of the same water cooler. Okay, the Haitian in Haiti, they have a less than 1% vaccination rate. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
So they're all coming over here. They're not going to be mandated for vaccines. They're not,
yeah,
going to be positive tested. or quarantined or anything like that. They're just going to be put in a bus with some
Yep.
paperwork, and then they drive them to Orlando, Florida. I've seen
Yep.
video of that where a
Yeah.
guy is he's at a gas station. There's like 20 or 30
We saw him
migrants,
in
whatever you want
downtown
to call them.
Miami. Your brother
Yeah,
Jeffrey and I,
yeah, they're sending them to Florida, they send them
Miami,
to Louisiana, they send them to Alabama
stateside.
and to Texas, and then all of a sudden these are the southern states, right, that are, that are having these surges and these
Yeah.
outbreaks, and they're not
Yeah.
mandating thing. They started a fight with Biden. I mean, it's just a theory.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it's interesting that these
Yeah.
could be, Trojan horses. It's
Yeah.
just
They
a
could
way
be.
of and of course, hopefully they'll vote Democrat.
Yeah.
So
Well, hopefully. I mean, Israel's family is not going to do that, I don't think. Good kid. I shouldn't be mentioning his name. I don't have his permission, but boy, the preamble is clear as could be. And I doubt any of his, quote, Americans, because I think he still has a green card, could do what he did. And he had it, and he was almost crying. That was today. And that was my 6th hour class of regular psychology kids. Some of them have learning situations. Great bunch of kids, kind of a humbling experience. It's called the Federalist Papers. That's what they wrote.
you got it now.
Federalist Papers, and a good read for some of you that it'll be a little slow read because it's written back in the late 1700s by James Madison. Shoot, Alexander Hamilton, and there's one other writer, and I'm ashamed that I don't remember it. And also at Broward College, when I taught there, North Campus, we went over the Federalist Papers. Some of you might be. There's actually 2 people I know that I had at Broward that'll be maybe logging in tonight because I saw them the other day at church long ago. I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago. I was there for 24 years. And Gesner, if you're there, hello. And we'll talk later. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's your show. The
Okay,
show
well,
tonight is, usually we have a format. We talk about one specific conspiracy, or the last show was Preludes to War. That was kind of the overall conspiracy of, what are these events that happened, and
yeah,
all that. And then tonight I asked you, what are your favorite conspiracy theories?
well,
Or what are,
yeah,
what did you think were some major events that happened? And you shared with me, I don't think we could talk about a couple of them,
yeah,
uh, just because they're recent and they're
yeah.
still,
Recent. I know that at the
uh,
end, right? And I
yeah.
don't think it's good.
We can, I mean, we've talked about a little bit of them, and if
Yeah,
anyone wants to go back and watch I think it's Buck versus Bell is our second episode.
yeah,
You can go back and watch that and see that we did talk a little bit about the pandemic because it was a sterilization campaign back in the 20s. So
yeah,
obviously there's some stuff going on today. I mean, we heard a little bit from a popular pop artist came out and said that
yeah.
her
Wow.
Trinidad friend had some swollen
Yeah,
testicles. And if you remember in our episode of Buck versus Bell, we talked about that University of Miami study where
yeah.
they had found COVID in the male testicle. So,
Jeez.
but anyways, we don't have to talk about
Yeah,
that. But you brought up the Lincoln assassination.
yeah.
So, what part of that did you think was? I mean, did you think it was John Wilkes Booth? Did you
No.
think? So, all right, we'll get into it.
Well, it's not John Wilkes. I mean, uh, was he there? He may have been at the scene, but because he's an actor and he worked there, and we really don't have. Uh, he's from a family now. He did have Southern sympathies, no question. He was certainly part of the Mary Surratt group that was talking about at her boarding house, along with the other Lewis Payne and Axelrod, um, about somehow getting rid of Lincoln. He made one, which was a carriage attempt to hijack a carriage, and there was another situation where Mary Todd Lincoln was by herself. They thought Lincoln was in it too, in their attempt to hijack. This is the early days of. There was no Secret Service. It was called the Pinkerton Detective Service. But however, on the night of the assassination, there's
Well,
two.
they were contracted. They were just like a militia kind of that they contracted, right?
And there's no
That was
question they
kind of the
all had.
Wild West was back then too.
Yes, and speaking of the Wild West, you had Quantrill's Raiders that were, as the Civil War was coming to an end and the South was going to lose, some of Quantrill's raiders left the Missouri-Kansas border and were identified by Pinkerton detectives and others in Washington, D.C. around mid-April, which was Lincoln was shot on Good Friday night, April the 14th, 1865, died the next morning at 7:22 a.m., April 15th, in the Peterson house across the street. There are some eyewitnesses that say they saw Booth jump from the presidential box where Lincoln and his wife were watching the infamous play My American Cousin. But some people identified who were working for the Pinkerton Secret Service, or at least at that time was the origins of what we now call the Secret Service, a guy named John B. Floyd. John B. Floyd was part of the Confederate Secret Service headquartered on the Canadian border between the United States and Canada, which did have some incursion activities at the tail end of the war into New York State. I think it was also mainly New Hampshire and Vermont where they were trying to come in and perhaps orchestrate, conspiratorial activities. Booth's diary, lots of pages are missing. This would be like the Nixon Watergate, his secretary who claimed that she accidentally erased some of Nixon's tape recordings of himself in the White House during the Watergate scandal. Well, Edmund Stanton, Edwin McMaster Stanton, he is alleged to have eradicated parts of Booth's diary. And the person that Samuel Mudd, who set Booth's leg, who allegedly broke his leg, and somebody broke their leg probably, landing on the stage floor, fleeing Ford's Theater after six, whatever they was, they yelled in Latin, something tyrannus, always to the tyrants as they ran away. Some people identified that as John B. Floyd, who was an agent for the Confederate Secret Service. And out of, I forget the name in Canada, but obviously Richmond, Virginia, authorized by a backdoor approach, not by the Confederate Congress, but by Jefferson Davis gave it a go-ahead, which is why he was incarcerated after the Civil War for possible role in the Kennedy assassination. He was imprisoned at Fortress Monroe, Virginia. If you're familiar with that area, that's where they put him in prison, asked him questions. He wouldn't answer anything. Finally, everything kind of wore off. After 2 or 3 years, they let him go back to Mississippi and,
Didn't they hang everybody that was?
They hung,
right here.
Yeah, they hung Mary Surratt, David Axelrod. What's his name? The other guy there's two other guys that I mentioned. Mary Surratt was the first woman in American history to be executed for a capital crime and hung. If you don't count the Salem witches. And there was a tribunal. That's what that is right there.
Yep.
To investigate. A lot of questions about it because they rushed to judgment. Kind of like the Kennedy assassination. These guys wanted to cure. They wanted to find out who did just, blame it on Booth.
Yeah. And then there's a conspiracy around John Wilkes Booth dying, and so they trapped him in a farmhouse, right? Yeah. Supposedly this guy had a broken leg. It was him and another guy. They surrounded it. They lit it on fire. One guy came out, and then they shot the other guy, right? I don't remember the whole story.
Yeah, they shot Booth. I mean, Booth was probably killed there. However, there's controversy that John B. Floyd was probably the one that was shot. There never has been a positive graveside identification. There was an attempt to exhume the body that is supposedly Booth's body out of Maryland, and there was not a positive identification. Now with DNA, we might be able to find something. There's a mummified body in Enid, Oklahoma, ENID, Oklahoma. And for those of you that are Westminster graduates, the pastor of a church in Enid, Oklahoma has kind of done what I've done for a part-time hobby, is look at conspiracy. And he claims the mummified body that has been in Enid, Oklahoma for a while, and it was a guy that moved to Enid to get away from everything. He claims is John Wilkes Booth. Now I say, yeah, there's the path. That's probably John.
Right, that was the escape route.
Yeah, that's the escape route, and Garrett's farm, tobacco farm. I would say that That's John B. Floyd. We don't have any record of John B. Floyd ever dying a natural death anywhere. He disappears from American history, and I say that probably the body that's in the grave in Maryland is that of John B. Floyd, and the mummified remains in Enid, Oklahoma, according to this pastor who is an amateur historian. So you got to kind of, once you get into this stuff with conspiracies, you sort of have to be careful and really kind of slow down and say, all right, is this guy really for real? The Enid, Oklahoma guy, I know him. I don't know him, but I know of people that he knows, and he seems pretty legit. Robbie, you know the Sprocks. The Sprock
Right.
family. Okay, Mrs. Sprock
Yeah.
is from that city. She was born and raised there, and she says this guy is the real deal. And he was John Wilkes Booth left and lived in Enid, Oklahoma, and she said that is just as well known in that city that she grew up in as a little girl as the store on the corner or whatever. These things stick with you. These facts stick with you. And she said even her ancestors said, like her great grandparents that she talked to before they died, that they knew that John Wilkes Booth was living in Enid. This was back in probably the late 1800s. So he got away. He didn't do it, and even did some acting out there. But he did it under an assumed name. They have his mummified body. It is preserved. For some, I don't know why it was mummified. I don't know the whole story. Interesting story. If you go to Enid, Oklahoma, ENID, Oklahoma history, just start reading if that's what you want to do, and it'll blow your mind. So the assassin of Lincoln, John B. Floyd had help, and you were talking about the Wild Wild West. Quantrill's Raiders, who were pro-Confederate, I would call them terrorists, and they were ruthless. Guerrilla warfare, would attack. Obviously it's a Civil War, so pretty much fair game. They would attack a lot of Yankee situations, and your stepmother has connections on her Confederate side, 2 Confederate soldiers, Snyder's Battalion. These are uncles of hers, Lisa, who has connections to the Quantrill Raiders. They were pretty fierce. They didn't give up. Even when the Civil War was over, they refused to say they were part of a reunited nation. There was still a lot of animosity and everything else. But Quantrill's Raiders, one of the members of it was Frank James. Frank James was the brother of Jesse James. Frank James is identified by about 10 eyewitnesses as outside of Ford's Theater on Good Friday, April the 14th, 1865. And also, what really gets crazy, was a very inebriated Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son. And, he and his father, acrimonious relationship at best. If you ever watch the movie Lincoln with, what's his name, Lewis, that does a great job in playing Lincoln, Daniel Day-Lewis. I forget who plays Robert Todd Lincoln, but you really get a strong, whoever wrote that screenplay really brings out the acrimonious relationship between Robert Todd Lincoln and his father. So is it possible that Robert Todd hated his dad and wanted him killed and was drunk and drinking with these guys? Because they all were at the tavern. Booth was probably at the tavern too. And he probably knew Frank James, if that is true about Frank James. But you also have on a higher up level, these guys might have been pawns, on a higher up level, you have what's called the Knights of the Golden Circle, which was a union, high up union conspiracy group. Edwin McMaster Stanton, Secretary of War, George Britton McClellan, at one time the leader of the Union Army, who hated Lincoln with a passion, a Union general who hated Lincoln. Lincoln appointed him as head of the Union forces in 1861. And, McClellan would not aggressively pursue the enemy, kind of let Lee escape several times, including the Battle of Antietam, September 21st, 1862. But the Knights of the Golden Circle included as members, now we know this has been declassified, the Secretary of War under Lincoln, the main Union general under Lincoln, George McClellan, who ran against Lincoln, running on the Democratic Party ticket in 1964 and 18 against Abraham Lincoln. And these guys were members of the Knights of Golden Circle, and they had affiliations with the Confederate Secret Service. So there's reason to believe that all these guys were stooges and pawns, patsies, like Lee Harvey Oswald. Just he's working at the Texas School Book Depository. He happens to be in the second floor.
Right.
He is eating his lunch at the time the shots are fired. That's what he said, and we don't believe that because
Yeah, it's like they set up
yeah,
they stage it,
yes,
right? And then
yeah,
John Wilkes Booth is an actor, and he
yeah,
works
there
at
he
the
is.
Ford Theater. They could
Yeah,
have assassinated him
yeah,
tons of times,
tons of
probably.
times.
Same thing with
Yeah,
JFK. There were so
yep.
many other
Oh
buildings they
yeah,
could have chose.
Miami. He was in Miami. They could have shot him
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Miami. In fact,
They
they planned
waited
on.
until
Yeah,
a certain area at a certain time, and then
yeah.
now
Tape
there's some
tape recording. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I'm saying there's some conspiracies around the Civil War too. I mean,
Sure.
Lincoln. A lot of people hated Lincoln, and even
Yeah.
some of the. You want to talk about some of the banks? Okay, the
Yeah.
big bankers at the time,
Yes.
because wasn't that? Now I could be wrong, but so yes, the Civil War was about slavery. Okay, it was
Right.
about a lot of things, but the human rights violations, right? That
Sure.
was what kind of got
Yeah.
the public to buy
Yeah.
into it, right? But it was mostly because, and this is what I think, this is one of my theories of some stuff I read, is that okay, so slave owners were getting loans. Slaves were collateral, right? Just like
Yes.
anything else, they were
Yes.
collateral. So slave owners were getting big loans to buy lots of
Yes.
slaves,
Yes.
right? They were getting loans from bank, and then
Yes.
they would use that as an investment. It's a
Yep.
collateral, and then they would sell them to other slave owners,
Yep.
and then and then they wouldn't make a payment for the slaves. It's
Yep.
like a car. So when the bank comes to repossess the slaves, the plantation owner would be like, well, they ran off or they died, and so the banks had really no way of tracking a lot of these slaves, and they were just getting ripped off towards the end, right before the
Yes.
Civil War started. They were just getting severely ripped off, and these weren't banks in the South. These were
No.
banks in New York.
New
These
York.
were banks in
Philadelphia and New York.
Philadelphia.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. These were the big, some of these big central banks. And so, yeah, so you could say, yeah, well, it was about slavery, but it was more of the banks were being ripped off by the slave scam that was going on.
Well, it's almost
So,
like with the.
and then Lincoln was
Yeah.
probably supposed to, give these guys some money back or whatever, or
No.
give them some,
No, he wasn't.
or they were supposed to do some favors, and then so yeah, you're right. It kind of correlates with JFK. He's kind of rocking the same boats.
Right.
He was messing with the Federal Reserve, the central banking system, and then
Yeah.
he
Now,
gets
one
shot.
thing. Also, the main insurance companies, and I forget what they were at the time in Philadelphia and New York, were selling life insurance policies to plantation owners for their slaves. So
Wow, I
if
didn't know
you
that.
lost a really key slave, um, it's sick. But one historian described it. This is really sick, and we may get in trouble for this, but maybe not. It's like
It's a
fantasy
conspiracy show.
football.
You're supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, okay. It's like fantasy football. You have your favorite players. Well, there were some slaves that were incredibly gifted, and so plantation owners didn't want to lose them, didn't want them running away and joining the Union Army or whatever. So they bought life insurance on them or insurance to replace them. And so there were lots of unscrupulous insurance agents out of the North that were selling either replacement or life insurance on slaves. And one time you guys gave me for Christmas, and I don't know where I put it. I hope it's somewhere up in the attic. It was a series of like original documents.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that, but they
Yeah,
were
I
replicas.
wish I could find that because I would buy it and replace it in a heartbeat because I could have used that. And I only had it for like a couple of years, and it got put somewhere. Well, probably back in the day when everything
Right.
was going.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't buy
all
it,
the
Yeah,
poop show.
yeah, I know. The pole
Kind of
barn.
like this one.
It's probably in the pole barn. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's in the chateau.
Like the chateau. Sorry,
So
private joke.
yeah, these are inside jokes.
Buy
Uh,
a T-shirt, and we'll tell you all about the chateau. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, there you go. Buy a
Yeah, that's
T-shirt.
another show.
You'll get the
The chateau.
chateau.
The chateau show. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness. That's a private joke. Sorry, people. Don't turn off.
yeah, they're gone anyways. But so all right, real quick, we got to wrap up the Lincoln
Yeah. Okay,
part
sure.
of this because
That's
I think
great.
you want to get to a couple others. So
Well,
so
maybe.
in the end,
Yeah.
Lincoln pissed off a lot of people.
Yes.
Had a lot of
Both
enemies
both
inside
sides.
and out on both the
Yeah.
North and the
Yeah.
South. So,
He
and
couldn't
like you
he
were
couldn't
saying,
win.
kind of like the JFK scenario.
Yes.
They pick a spot. They could have assassinated him at any point. They didn't. And then, he's at the theater, and we don't
Yeah.
know who shot him. Supposedly it was John Wilkes Booth. There's
Yeah.
many versions of the story,
Yeah.
and there's a whole lot of mystery and intrigue surrounding it. So,
Well, real quick, Mary Todd Lincoln was asked, and this has not been verified,
well,
but
she was a little crazy, wasn't
yeah,
she?
she
Like, was
was.
she like summoning spirits
But
and
she went to the
and
plays all the time, and John Wilkes Booth was one of her favorite actors. And one of the inquiry people asked her, and this you'd have a hard time digging this up. I've only read it twice. Is that when Booth shot Lincoln, she goes, "Well, I looked at him after he shot Lincoln, and it wasn't Booth, and she didn't know who it was." She said that. Mary Todd Lincoln said that.
yeah,
I mean, her husband sitting to her left. She turns, she hears the shot, and she looks and she ducks, and she sees the face of the guy because he's backing
right,
up. And he's going out the door, which wasn't guarded by Pinkerton guards that night, which was interesting. And the guy that was guarding
yeah,
the door to Lincoln's, viewing booth, whatever you want to call it. We're mixing up the word booth here, but we're talking about an actual place where they were watching the play. Um, the guy that was supposedly guarding the door, who was working for the Pinkerton Secret Service, which is what they called themselves, Pinkerton guards, he was never disciplined. He got a promotion.
yeah. Well,
Go
of course,
figure.
that's what you do. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what you do,
you
man. You do
you
what you're
uh
supposed to
you.
do.
It's like in
Yeah.
corporate America, you fire up.
Well, Jeffrey Epstein's jailers, nothing has happened to them. They're unpunished. Now, supposedly they said the one guy was gonna get this, this, and this. Nothing. They're still, I don't know. They did their job. Probably living in nice houses somewhere. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Oh, the Maine. Wow. All right. Jeez. This is interesting. I don't know how much time we have.
Just give a quick 5 minute.
Okay, well,
We
um,
don't need to. Like I said, this isn't a history show. This is a conspiracy
some
show.
of
So,
some of these kids will remember this story because the battleship Maine. Go ahead, give an overview of what happened. Go
well,
ahead.
real quick, yeah. So this is prior to the Spanish-American War, right?
Yep.
Now here we go. We're talking about preludes to war. Our last episodes. Well, here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
It was in the Havana Harbor, right? Right
Yep.
before the Spanish-American War. So it was like 1819 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
1818 is before the Civil War too.
Mm-hmm.
But we were supporting the Cubans, right, in their fight
Yes.
against Spain.
Yes.
So that's real quick what was going on. So you had the USS Maine was in the harbor. I guess it was keeping Spain ships of Spain from attacking so Cuban, the Cuban island, they're trying to get resupplied and fuel and armaments and stuff. And so the Maine was out there protecting that. So, and then it exploded in the harbor and killed, I don't know, there was like 200 something,
Yes.
there was 300 something men on it, and it killed like 200 something of them.
Okay.
That's about as much as I know.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm going to divert from this just a little bit and talk about your Key West side of the family, because after the main explosion, the bodies were brought back to Key West. And when you were 1 year old, your great aunt Marguerite held you as a baby, and you were maybe you might have been a year old, and she kept doing a thing, where's your sense? And she would bang.
Oh, 1898. I was way off.
Okay, yeah, that was, well, no, 1898. But Aunt Marguerite was in middle school, and she remembers, and she told the story to us back in 1977 in Key West. Your mother, myself, and you might remember. I don't know if you remember well, Mama and Papa, your great grandparents, but Mama's sister was Sarah, Aunt Sarah Spencer,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Starling Spencer, and we were all over at Aunt Marguerite's house, who was Mama and Aunt Sarah's aunt. That's how old this lady was. She was like 99 years old, living by herself in Key West on prime property that she refused to sell. And she told the story that she remembers in 1898, the bodies coming in, and they were being unloaded off the ship packed in what little ice they could to preserve them from the USS Maine. So you have kind of
a connection to this.
you have a connection to this, very much so, because your great 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 aunt Marguerite Sawyer. Sawyer is a big name in Key West. Corey Sawyer played for Florida State, even though African American. I think you're blood related somehow. There was a marriage between the Sawyers, black and white, in the Bahamas. He's from one side, you're from another, but you guys were Corey Sawyer. You're related to him. And anyway, Marguerite Sawyer remembers the bodies coming in, and they're buried in the Key West Cemetery. There's a special place for them. So you have a connection with this. I don't know if we're going to get.
So what's the conspiracy around this?
Well,
you think?
Yeah. Well, here's my story.
It didn't hit an iceberg.
No icebergs there. They were at mooring, as you can see here. They're not docked. That's probably the mooring photo, because that's the El Morro Castle that you have right there that I'm using my cursor. I probably can't do it. It's the castle on the right of the Maine. The Maine was an Olympic class battleship built with the Olympia and the New York and some others in 1890 at the behest of the U.S. Navy to build it. And the guy that was responsible for the book Influence of Sea Power Upon History was pushing for an all-steel Navy in 1890. So these ships, the keels were laid. Okay, so they were steamships, steam-driven. I'm trying to think of the author of Influence of Navy Upon American History. But anyway, a famous author. He was a Civil War veteran in the Navy, and then taught at the U.S. Naval Academy, and then wrote that book, which influenced Teddy Roosevelt, well, not just Teddy Roosevelt, but the presidents in 1890 to build these ships. So they were steam powered. So anyway, the Maine departed from Tampa, Florida in, I forget what it was, December something, and got to Cuba February, I think, 15th, 1898. It was moored. It was not docked. It was moored. And of course, on February the 15th, around dusk, the ship exploded. Now, in 1972, I talked to a guy who, believe it or not, survived the main explosion. I didn't know this at the time. I was working on my master's thesis. I was outside of what is now, Rutgers, New Jersey, and I forget what the city was. And I stayed with his family. I knew this guy from Bowling Green State University. He was in college there, and I was in graduate school, and Ron Lutchins was his name. And I stayed at their house, did research on my master's thesis, and met the family. And Mrs. Lutchins said, well, I had an uncle on the Maine. I said, really? And she went over to a drawer and opened it up, and there was this almost like a Civil War type hat and a clarinet and a clarinet music stand. I go, what's that all about? She goes, well, he was in the band. He played clarinet, and he was transferred in Tampa at the last minute from the crew of the USS New York to the USS Maine, because back then, when they weren't doing anything and there was no war, they would have boxing matches between the ships, tug of war contests.
They were killing time.
Yeah, they were killing time. So he was sent to the Maine because they were short clarinets. And he thought, yeah, I'll go to the Maine. And by the way, they're going to Cuba. It's really going to be nice. Oh, heck yeah. Pina coladas, whatever. That's actually Puerto Rico, but whatever. So they're moored on February the 15th, 1898, off El Morro Castle in Havana, Cuba. And he said his job was a coal passer, which means he shoveled coal into the furnace when he wasn't playing clarinet. And how I ran into him was that Mrs. Lutchins told me, I said, wow, that's really something, because nobody really lived much. There were 235 fatalities out of 200 people. Only 30 people lived. She goes, well, you're in luck. If you want, he's over at an assisted living facility 10 miles from here, Rockaway, New Jersey, wherever it was. And so we all got, I still remember, it was a Ford Country Squire wagon that seated probably 12 people. And we all got in there, and we went over to the assisted living facility. He was at that time, his name was Leon Fisher. He's not listed on the main roster because the transfer,
it was last minute.
Last minute. He was still on the USS New York. But if you look up Leon Fisher, Fischer, you will find his name on there. But he was sitting in 1972. He's sitting in a hospital bed. He's 102 years old, and he just finished dinner, stewed tomatoes. And Mrs. Lutchen comes in and says, "Uncle Leon, I got a young man here. He's a good friend of Ron's." And this guy was still pretty sharp, but he couldn't. He was just sitting in a bed, and he would like to know all about the Maine. And he goes, "Really? Okay, well, have a seat." This guy was a survivor of the USS Maine, and I got to talk to him, and I will forever regret. I have no proof of this. I didn't have a tape recorder, but he proceeded to tell me this. He said, "I don't know what to say." He said, "I gave my deposition at the inquiry of the USS Maine's sinking, and it's not published. And I bought the inquiry for the U.S. Department of the Navy, Department of Institute Proceedings, and his testimony is not in it." Okay.
Huh.
But everybody else, it's a real thin volume. They say it's an expansive inquiry into the
Yeah.
a bunch of crap. And he's not in it, but they interviewed him, and he said, "This is what I saw. I'm a coal passer. I was down there near where the boilers were." And he said, "I saw a bunch of what looked like powder charges connected by copper wire going all the way down to the amidships." And I didn't even know anything about the Navy. What's amidships? Well, it's the middle of the ship. So it went from where the coal and the engine was at the rear all the way down to the middle of the ship, and that's where the explosion took place. He says, "I think they blew it up." And I'm thinking, why would they blow it up? And he's looking at me. He says, "Well, they blow it up because if the Maine blows up in a quote Spanish port controlled by the Spanish, then we can blame it on
now you can go to war.
You go to war, and there it is. And what did we get in that? We got Puerto Rico, we got Guam, we got Pago Pago, we got all sorts of stuff that we forced the Spanish to basically, I would say, give us. Treaty of Paris 1898, Treaty of Paris. We got all that stuff. Sorry, that's just the way it is.
So you had an eyewitness account on this one.
Yeah, I heard the guy tell me this, and he started crying. I said, "Well, how did you live?" He said, "Well, we went. I'm going to use the ship here. I don't know if my picture came on there when I just moved this. I hope not. I don't know how to get that off. But anyway,
no, you're not.
Well, he said we went to battle stations. I go, "Well, had the explosion happened?" He said, "No." He says, "It's dusk. We all just ate, and we had coffee and con leche and all that other stuff." He said, "We're chilling. We're out there and it's a beautiful night, February the 15th, 1898, and we go to battle stations. We go to quarters. He called it quarters. We go to quarters." So he said, "My job was to go from, I don't want to point again because it's going to block it, the back of the ship, the where I was.
Right.
I go upstairs. I take an M1 Garand Navy rifle, and I run down a hallway. And as I'm running down the hallway, and if you can see on the close-up of the ship, I don't know if you can enlarge it at all.
I could get another picture.
Well, try to enlarge what you have. That'll do. Okay, if you can't, that's okay. Anyway, on a Navy ship, you have the doorways don't go all the way to the floor. They go about this far up, and it's watertight doors that shut. Okay, so it's about this high up off the deck. He says, "I happened to be right in the doorway, and there were guys in a line in front of me and guys in a line in back of me. I had to be right in the doorway when the explosion occurred. It blew me out the doorway into the water. Broke both my ankles instantly. I'm holding my rifle. I'm skipping along the water." That's how fierce it was. I might have broken something in my neck. I don't know, because he was disabled. And he said, everybody in front of me and behind me was immediately crushed and emulsified and came out behind me like tomato paste.
Ugh.
They were just crushed. So he's in the water. Okay. I don't know.
He's eating stewed tomatoes.
What happens was, he says, I come out, I'm skipping along the water towards a jetty, a rock jetty like Point of Americas where we used to snorkel. Okay. He says, and I'm skipping along, and I get close to the jetty. Some Cuban fishermen who are ducking see me in the water, pick me up, pull me out, and save my life. My ankles were broken. I couldn't stand up. And they pull me out of the water. And the guys that were in front of me and behind me now are on top of the water, and the fire comes out and starts to cook their remains. And as he's telling me the story from his assisted living facility bed, he has just finished. He didn't finish the stewed tomatoes. And he's telling me the story, and I saw these stewed tomatoes in this beige plastic dish that you see in these type of places. He's got stewed tomatoes there, and he didn't finish them. And every time I see stewed tomatoes now, I think of his story.
You
That's
think
the
of
Elmore. That's the Elmore Castle on the right. That's
yeah,
probably going to come in. It's probably going to moor right next to that jetty, right where that guy's in the boat. It's going to come
yeah.
in, and it's
And
going to
so,
moor.
what was the official explanation? It just exploded.
It's
It wasn't
probably
torpedoed, or they said it was
now the
attacked
official
by Spain.
explanation, years 1907, the official explanation is probably a methane gas explosion because it was a coal ship, didn't have proper ventilation, and the spark ignited the methane gas from the coal dust and blew it up. It wasn't the Spanish. And at that point, I would say, okay, then you got to give the Spanish back all their stuff. Sorry, if the war was started on that, you
Yeah,
could
and
see
like
it.
you said, we got
Yeah,
Puerto Rico out of it. We got
Guam.
several. Yeah,
Yeah,
Guam.
lot of areas, a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Some parts of the Virgin Islands, I believe. There'll be people out there that'll probably contest. That's fine. That's fine. Bring it on. Tell me what else we got. I'd like to hear
yeah.
because we did get
W-
other stuff.
War is always big money.
Yeah, and you have relatives on, well, at least my side of the family. My step grandfather was in the Spanish American War, Philippine insurrection, Boxer Rebellion, Grandpa Roberts that I've told stories about to you. He's not a biological relative. He was my step grandfather that my dad's mother married after years after my biological grandfather had passed away 11 years later. But was a great guy, and he told me stories about the Spanish American War and waking me up at Christmas Eve and telling me that
Yeah, I remember you telling me
yeah,
this.
He thought I was Juarez. He thought I was a Cuban national, and I was only 9 years old. But I love that guy. As far as I'm concerned, he's my grandfather. He's the only grandfather I knew, of that on that side. I didn't know my biological one. And let's see, you have another
Well, I was about to say
yeah.
your other. Well, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
Well, Grammy Harger's side, you had a relative of the Spanish American War that was with a Michigan volunteer regiment. Um, and because he ate tainted beef that was given and other food, he probably got a form of trichinosis, which will go into the brain as an amoeba and do brain damage. And in
Yeah, yeah, it's
1903,
bad.
1903 right outside of, a suburb of Detroit, he basically, he'd already left his wife. And this is my mother's uncle. And I'm trying to think of his name. Okay, Harger, Brant Rodney Harger. He was with the 16th Michigan, and he was attached to the Rough Riders under Teddy Roosevelt. And he
Man, you
had a
don't even remember your own family's name?
I know I can't believe it, but anyway, he had a death by cop experience. Cop told him to put down the butcher knife he was carrying. He wouldn't do it, and he charged the cop, and he got shot and killed at age 37 in 1903. And he was a veteran of the. Of course, I never knew him. My mother never knew him. Yeah, stock market crash. Is that what that is?
Yeah, well, we don't have time to get
No,
into
we
it,
don't.
but
Okay.
again, I
Well,
asked you what your favorite conspiracies were. You
yeah,
mentioned this
I
one.
did. Those are good
Uh,
ones.
we could do this
Yeah,
next week if you like, because
sure,
there's
whatever.
a ton.
Yeah,
I mean, especially now that I play the stock market. I mean,
yeah.
when I was going through all this, I mean, I saw some major similarities to
Okay.
uh, what's kind of going on now with the market. So it's a little disturbing, I would
Yeah,
say.
sure.
Um, so,
That'll be
but
good
I
next
just
week.
wanted to bring that one up, and then obviously, we did JFK. We actually did two shows on
Yeah,
JFK.
yeah.
Uh,
We did
that
the,
one's just there's just so much stuff in that one.
yeah.
You'd almost have to do a third show,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Or
to
you might have to
yeah,
do two shows in the stock market just
yeah. No, I mean,
just the Federal
like I said,
Reserve.
when I was reading into it, it was horrible.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up one of my favorite. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to
No, go ahead.
do five things at once. One of my
Right.
not the Haitian bridge or the
Yeah.
bridge, but this is one of my. I like this conspiracy theory. Gary Webb. So if you remember the crack crisis, right?
Right. Right.
So this was basically this guy was a journalist. and he was researching the CIA's involvement in the massive cocaine, the influx
Yeah.
of cocaine from Southern America that they were using to sell in LA and to the Bloods and the Crips, the gangs, right? They were
Yeah.
using, and then then those guys, obviously started manufacturing it differently and turning it into crack, and then you had this crack explosion all through America, devastated so many lives, put tons of
Sure.
people in jail, and these two conspiracies that I'm about to bring up kind of tying together. But the CIA was funding the Contras in Latin America. They were trying to overthrow one of the governments. But this guy, this journalist, was investigating it and was exposing the CIA. And then he winds up in 2004. They find him dead in his house with
Jeez.
2 bullet wounds in his head, and it's a suicide. Okay,
Yeah.
now so go figure. And then obviously, uh, you know, so when you have something like that, all this stuff. That's why I love conspiracies, because you can tie a lot of things
Yeah.
in together. These events, because private prisons make a ton of money off of
Yeah. Yeah.
crime.
Yeah.
And so they're big lobbyists. They're campaign
Yeah.
fundraisers. They're campaign donators. So I like this one. This one was a good one of my favorites. I've studied it a little bit, and it's funny how it's just interesting. All this stuff ties together. Um, conspiracies.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to bring those up in the
Yeah,
end
that's good. And yeah, that was good. And we can
because
go
these are
into
more
later.
recent. These are more my time. Like I could go
Yeah,
back
sure.
and
Oh
look
yeah.
all this stuff up, and
Yeah.
um, I didn't live through any of these. All right, do some shout outs here real quick, and then I
Yeah.
think that's it for the show. We're right within
Okay.
the hour time frame, and so again, thank you everybody for coming in and watching us. So we do have a few donations, so some of these people are getting some T-shirts. Uh, I probably shouldn't read a couple of
No,
these. So
probably not.
yeah, I got caught off guard last week. All right,
Yeah.
so and this is a good one. Insurrect me, and that's not bad. I think that goes insurrection. So insurrect me says stay out of DC tomorrow. False flag event. So
Wow.
they're having that DC rally,
Yeah,
right?
they are for the
For
trial.
the January 6th
Yeah.
prisoners or whatever.
Jeez.
So don't go to DC tomorrow
Okay.
for the
I'll stay home.
uh
Yeah, it's the trial of the people that I guess they call it a show trial. It's not really Trump anymore. It's the people that showed up. One of which was a guy that's a Democrat, but he wanted to be let off from the docket of people being
yeah,
charged.
because he said he was helping,
Yeah,
because he was like, I dressed up as a Trump supporter. I made him
yeah,
look
yeah,
bad. Why are you guys
yeah,
incarcerating me?
yeah, yeah. Oh man, what a show trial
Collu-
show.
colluding Russian says anyone need a laptop?
Jeez.
Um,
Wow. Is Monique back on with I gotta get the
oh,
sociogram.
her mom said hi.
Okay, hello to Mrs.
Jane.
Simonian. Hello.
Yeah, Jane.
Yes. Wow, great lady.
Jane said hi.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful
Monig
looking
is one of
lady.
our sponsors. So I
Yeah,
had it on here
yes.
earlier. If you go to Living Color World on eBay,
Okay. And I'll try
uh,
to get the sociogram, the excellent. I still have it and I will use it in about 2 units. Maybe I'll wait till I get it out when I'm using it in my unit and then I can highlight it for everybody. Because she did a heck of a job. I mean, as a high school junior, senior, whatever she was, that's as good as anything I've ever seen on that topic.
so yeah, so Living Color World on eBay is one of our sponsors. So we'd like to
Okay.
give a shout out. That's a big
Yeah.
sponsor of the show. She's definitely getting a free T-shirt. Um, so there's that, and then I can't read a couple of these other. The
Yeah.
Mandator. I'm not reading his. Uh, un, un, I think that Mr. Mandator. I think he means mandate, like mandates. He's the mandate
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not a dater, but like
Okay. Yeah.
he's
Mandator. Okay.
yeah, he's gonna
Yeah. Like the
mandate you
vaccine
for
mandate. Okay. We
yeah,
get,
Mr. Mandator.
yeah.
Uh, unemployed protester gave you $5, but he didn't say anything, so I guess he's protesting
Might be one of your
the
cousins.
show.
Sorry.
Well, there. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go. I'm not gonna read
No, we
that one.
won't go there. That's already
Yeah,
crossed
I
already.
got caught off guard last week.
Oh man, we've
All
already.
right. Well, that's it. That's the
All right,
show,
thank
Dad.
you.
That was
All right,
good. We'll be here next week. And
okay,
so
okay.
good job.
Give the kids a hug and a kiss, and all the cats. Give them a
Yeah.
hug
Well, I'm
too.
not kissing the cats.
Oh, come on. All right, all
All
right.
right.
That's it. Okay.
All right, Dad. Love you.
Love you. See you too. All right. Bye
All
bye.
right. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. That was it. That's our show. Make sure you tune in next week. Um, we'll probably be talking about the stock market. That's one thing that I'm very excited about, and I enjoy the market, but it's not looking so good lately. So it would be nice to get Mr. Joynt's perspective on that. So, anyways, again, thanks. Shout out to Living Color World on eBay. Thanks for all your support to the show, and we'll see everybody next week. Have a good night.